Welcome everybody to the Zoning Review Committee meeting for Wednesday, February 11th, 2025. I am Eric Eldridge. I am acting as chair during this meeting from the select board. We'll do quick introductions for the other members. Joe, why don't you start?
Joe Pollan, member.
Larry?
Larry Clausen, member, citizen at large.
Colin, if you can, you and then Ben, and then we'll have Bob go.
You got it. Good evening, Colin Loisel, Town Manager.
Ben McClure, Town Planner.
Hi, Bob Mitchell, consultant on the zoning redo.
Excellent. So first order of business. Why don't we review the updates to the definitions? Bob, you had provided that previously. Did you want to pull that up? And I guess the question is, do we want Bob to run through them each individually, or do we just want to make comments on items as we've seen them? Maybe you can give us a quick overview, Bob.
Well, first of all, what you pulled up does not have the comment section on the right-hand side, where we have questions for the zoning review committee. So I don't know why that does not have that, but there you go. There we go. So this red line version is a combination of responses to edits and recommendations and suggestions you, the committee, made at your January meeting, and some proposed changes that Judy and I are suggesting based on our review of the definition section. And then with that, there's some questions we have of the zoning review committee to give us some direction one way or another. So we can go down page by page and just quickly note what's changed on the page, and then if there's any questions for I'm going to have to line up the questions because the questions aren't lined up with for some reason the questions are not lined up with where they're attached, what section they're attached to. I don't know why that is, but so the if we could start at the top, or what are you still working on things here? What?
I can do whatever's easier for you. If I click on your question, it brings us to the section.
All right, then I'll tell you when we get to that section.
Perfect. Excellent.
Okay, so on the first page, is a new definition, accessory dwelling units. This is the definition that is in the state statute that, the new ADU legislation that was passed that is now in effect. And so this is one step in getting your bylaw into conformance with the state legislation. So this is word for word, pretty much the state language for ADUs. So.
And just as a aside relative to ADUs, Ben is working with NIMCOG, the regional planning group, through a technical assistance grant to begin working on updating our bylaw to match the current language in the law.
Yeah, I was going to note, so there's a few things here that NIMCOG and I are going to be working on. So I'm not sure how you want to do that, or the best way to go about doing it. I think they're going to start drafting stuff pretty soon. Because I do think we want to salvage some aspects of the TILQ bylaw as well. And just kind of like clear up some of the language as well to comply. So I'm reading it right now. So should we send you the draft that NIMCOG comes up with when the time gets kind of closer?
I think that is that to you, Bob. I
Yes,
guess.
Bob.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, sorry. Yeah.
Because
Um,
we're working with NEMCOG to review the ADU
right,
portion of things, because we already have uh, temporary living quarters that have
right,
are in our bylaws. So
yeah,
we're
yeah.
we're gonna try to salvage some of those pieces to that. I guess the question is in timing. So Ben, are we gonna have? Is our plan to have that ready for May town meeting? Because
Yeah,
that's
I believe so. We're
and is
hoping
that
to get it.
that-
Sorry, go
that's
ahead.
coming from the planning board?
Yeah, so I'm working with NIMCOG. We're trying to get it. I gave them a deadline of March 20th to have it on the planning board meeting to be eligible to still be on the town meeting warrant. So hopefully, if all goes to plan, it should be right on time.
So in answer to your question, I guess you could send it to us. It's not specifically part of our contract, but again, this is the issue of how much money you have and how much is doing the definitions going to take, and how much money is going to be left over that we could do other things. But send it to us and we could take a look at it and go and then decide from there.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that we're working with NEMCOG. I think what you're talking about, Ben, is the definition of ADU.
Yeah, so I mean, we're basically with NIMCOG, we got technical assistance for the whole bylaw. So I assume the definition would be included in that. So that's kind of where I was curious about like looping Bob in and stuff, Bob and Judy, because I do imagine that the definition is going to be a part of the work we do with NIMCOG as well.
Well, this is the language from the legislature. So what other definition would you have?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely sure yet. There's some stuff that like some language possibly, but like I said, it's like we were wondering of possibly salvaging some of the stuff from our previous bylaw to add to it, not like take anything away from this necessarily, but
Okay, well, if that's what you want to, if that's what you're talking about, tweaking this in some manner, then yeah, definitely send it to us.
Okay, sure.
I almost see this as two separate items. One being the definition section, which clearly follows state mandate. And then the other one would be the bylaw, and that would be a separate issue that's going to be added to our existing zoning bylaws ruling or manual, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so we just need to make sure that there's nothing in the definition that we put in here that contradicts the
Yeah, we
zoning
don't want
bylaw that we're proposing.
yeah, no conflicts, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So scroll down to bottom of page 2 and top, yeah. So the affordable housing, some changes. One just changing the name of the old DHCD to EOHLC, and some standard language from the language in that they now use in terms of the developments for affordable housing. And just some cleaning up some language. That's all there. Nothing major there. So next page, well, we'll get to our first question. Okay, right here, animal services. So at the last meeting, there was a discussion about this, and recommendation that something be added that would be broader in definition than just the animal veterinary services. After I put this in as a draft in going through the rest of the bylaw, I then discovered that pet grooming is including in the definition of professional services, which had raised a question in my notes from last meeting. And then, of course, animal sales, well, sales of animals, you could include as a retail sales operation. So this kind of incorporates all of that. And so is this something you want to keep add to your definition section, just so you have something that clarifies this in this manner?
So this is just a definition, but it's not used anywhere in our bylaws yet.
It's not used anywhere in your bylaw yet.
So, I mean, I don't see any harm in it being there. It's just possibly superfluous and could be confusing to people. I know some of our folks, I guess some of our folks, if they see it in the definition, will say, oh, well, now we're doing this. Is there any benefit to having it here? Because if we were to add it into the bylaws, we'd have to put the definition at that point anyway, right?
Yeah, so that this may be like a future topic to add it into the use table and clean up how you have it now, where you have, uh, pet grooming under professional services. You could have this category, more comprehensive category in the use table, and then you could put the definition here. So they're both going in proposed at the same time.
Larry, Joe, any thoughts on that?
So the thought that I have on this is the retail sales, it kind of jumps out at me a lot. Everything else that's here kind of goes together. When you get into retail sales of animals, like you are boarding them overnight. That's kind of its own thing. I don't know if we would want retail sales grouped in with everything else here, because everything else here is super benign. Retail sales, not so much.
Joe?
I think that there's an opening here for clarification, because there may be some entities that will do private animal sales. They may breed their own animals and at their home, and they may sell them online in a retail manner, but out of their home, because it might be a home business. So I can see that being included.
I can too, if someone's doing it out of their house. But if there's an actual location, where you're trying to board like dogs or cats or whatever, it gets, I mean, it does say excluding overnight boarding. So I guess if that applies to the retail sales.
So that would be overnight boarding of customers' pets,
Yeah,
not their own pets. So their own pets that they bred, it's still conceivably their own pets until they sell them, and then they won't be boarded. They'll be sold.
I think this might be one, Bob, that we should probably, if we're not addressing it anywhere else in our bylaws, I don't know that we would want to have it here, and that might be something that we would look to take up
And
at
there
another
are some
time.
situations where there are pet sitting services. I forget the name of the one online, but you can contract somebody and they can board your pet at their home for extended overnight or for a weekend. You're
Yeah.
taking a trip or whatever. So that's sort of like another. It's like an Airbnb for pets, right? So I've seen that.
Also, in terms of resale sales, there's different kinds of retail stores. There's sales, there's pet stores, right?
Yep.
I mean, they're still around, they're in the business districts and downtowns and whatnot like that. And they obviously keep their animals in the store overnight. That's part of the operation. But then you have, as you've already mentioned, people selling animals out of their house it's a different kind of retail sales, if you will.
And I wouldn't want to limit overnight boarding at a private situation because I was just boarding my daughter's cat when they went on vacation. So
Right.
I
right.
wasn't doing it for money. I'm not, it's not a retail. I don't do it, but you know what I mean? We can be so strict that we're actually hurting ourselves.
But it sounds like we don't have a particular issue today with this in our bylaws. We're not addressing it in our bylaws. We would just be adding in a definition that we'd have to review anyway when we do look to take it up in our bylaws.
Right. The only thing that I'm wondering is if we wanted to consider breaking off the retail sales of animals into something different, into a secondary category. Because I would anticipate that we would probably want to treat retail sales of animals, we may want to treat that differently than a groomer or a vet.
But we've already said we're not addressing it in our bylaws. So I think having the definition at this point in time is just gonna we may have to change it anyway when
Okay,
we
all right.
when we do go. So my take would be if we're not addressing it in our bylaws, I don't think we don't need to have it in our definition, and it may confuse people if we keep it there.
Yeah,
That's the way.
this is kind of a broad brush for animal services. So it doesn't include the private party aspect of things. So yeah, if we had a secondary bylaw that handled such things as animal sales, then we'd probably have to tighten this one up.
So it sounds like maybe Bob, can we just table this one?
Sure.
And when we
Absolutely.
have our larger, we have the larger committee, if somebody has a different perspective on it, and we can say that, hey, we think we should probably remove it. We're not voting on anything anyway tonight. So my suggestion is that we table this one, and that if somebody else in the committee feels strongly that this does need to be addressed at this time, then we can revisit it at our next meeting.
Okay. That's the consensus?
With this group.
Okay, let's go. Moving on then. So next page, battery storage systems. This was one of the items that just were discussed at the last meeting, and asked that definition be put in. This definition I took from the town of Medway. The town of Medway has been the leading community in the state in terms of dealing with battery storage systems. They hired a whole consultant firm. They were one of the first towns to address this issue. They worked very closely with the state people. And this was the definition that was developed for battery storage systems that was agreed upon by all of those people. So an attempt to avoid reinventing the wheel, cut and paste.
Beautiful.
Looks good.
Good.
So then at the bottom of the page, business and dwelling, there was some comments about the existing language was kind of confusing or not clear. And Judy took this one on and rewrote the language. The first sentence you see is basically a rewrite of her effort to rewrite and clarify what this is supposed to mean.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the ones that I had a question on. No, we went past it on the. I think it's a little bit further
Oh.
up. the term boarding, are we doing the boarding house one?
Oh, I'm sorry, boarding house. Yeah, you
Yeah.
did have a comment. Reference lane should be boarding house capitalized. Let's see.
So it's the second sentence, the term boarding house. So it's talking about the legal term. So it should be capitalized there.
Okay. Boarding house. Okay. Yep. Great, thanks.
Sorry, continue on.
Any comments on the business and dwelling?
I didn't have any.
Okay, let me put this over here, put this over here. Let's see. Okay, next daycare facility. Again, this we changed it to childcare facility, which is the title in the state legislation. And this was just tweaked a little bit to replicate the definition in the state general law that covers the daycare center, childcare center. So that's the it's a general law chapter 15D that has the definition for childcare facility. So we just brought it into conformance with that.
And that one, I think, I don't know if it's second, I think it's the second sentence. It says child care center when we have child care facility above. So we'd want to make sure that we're consistent there. And then the only question is, because we've removed the elderly care, is that, do we now have a gap because we've removed that from the definition?
If I could go back to your first comment about the second sentence where it says child development center.
No, it says child care center, sorry, in caps. I'm
Not
sorry,
in
it's the
mine.
fifth, the sixth line.
Oh, okay, down.
Second sentence,
Okay,
sorry.
yes, okay, all right, yes, child care facility. Yep, okay.
Sorry, I I should I think it's second sentence. I don't remember.
Well, it's one of those
Yeah.
sentences. Yeah, okay. So yeah, and then the other part of this is the whole elderly section is not part of the state definition, obviously, because it's childcare facility.
So is there another definition that we should have in there for elderly care?
You would, I don't know. I haven't, that's a good question. I don't have an answer to. We can look that up. I mean, I don't know if I can see if there is some standard definition for that.
I think that's something that we're going to have to need. We've had interest in permitting for zoning changes for an elderly at one point. It hadn't gone through, but there has been interest in that. Elderly daycare.
Elderly daycare. Okay. Well, I'll do some research on that.
Yeah, I think if we're going to remove it, we should make sure that we have a separate definition for that and that it's covered in wherever it is today. I don't know if it is covered today.
Okay.
Do we know if in our existing bylaws for daycare facilities, whether removing the elder, I just concerned if we change the definition, but we don't change the associated bylaw, whether we now have a gap. Because I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with that bylaw.
I will just note you do currently have one, the Bhakta Samaj on Frost Road has a special permit from the select board from like 2018 for elderly daycare, which was before this group 2 years ago, I think now changed all of that. So the planning board would issue it now, but at the time it was the select board.
But it's a special permit.
Correct, using this definition, which at one point included the elderly piece.
So I think we should make sure that we're not opening ourselves up by changing this definition at this time. I'm certainly good with being consistent with mass general law, but we don't want to open up another problem.
So I don't see anything in your use table, and maybe it's someplace else. Is there a separate use for elderly? I don't see one. You have you have a separate section that's called assisted living and continuing care campus development. And in your use table, you have a category called continuous care campus, which is allowed only in the B3 district. So you don't have anything
Yeah,
called elderly 60 years older or older daycare.
correct. I think that's why I don't know the history of how the language ended up in this specific definition, but this is the use that was cited when the special permit was issued for what is now an elderly daycare on Frost Road. I think because it didn't exist, maybe at one point we added the language to this. I'm not sure, but you're right, Bob. There's not a separate use for elderly daycare currently.
Yeah, I mean, your continuing care campus, the word campus is informative because you have to have more than 4 acres and 200 feet of frontage and a whole bunch of other criteria. Um, and it's only allowed in one district, and there's a whole long list of criteria, which is different than an elderly daycare um, use. So you have a definite, it's in your definition now, but it's not allowed anywhere in your bylaw.
Well, I think you're right, but I think that the point Eric is making is that we have granted a special permit technically under the daycare facility for a group that is doing elderly daycare because the definition of daycare facility previously included the
I
elderly
see.
folks.
I see. I
Very
see.
bizarre, only in Tyngsborough.
Yeah.
Has that,
Well,
has that permit ever been enacted? Are they actually using that facility?
I
I,
don't I
I
don't
don't
believe
know.
they currently are today. They were for a couple of years because we got complaints about the buses. I'll follow up with Pam in the planning office because I know that they've been before the planning board for site modifications for the church. So I'm not sure what the current use is, but I know that the special permit was issued to them.
so um, if you create a separate definition of elderly daycare, let's call it that for the moment, you would then need to add that into the use table somewhere.
Yes. So I think we need to do a little digging into this one to make sure that we have the right definitions, and then in the bylaws as they're currently written, see whether we have any gap, right?
Right.
All right, so we got an action item there.
Just taking notes so I get all this down right. Okay. So let's see. Commercial recreation. So
Well, let's just take a stop by as to what we have for commercial breeding facility, commercial kennel. So these are all, it says commercial establishment where dogs, cats, or other pets are kept for the purpose of sale, breeding, or boarding care. That doesn't address personal sales. Commercial breeding facility facility designed solely for the purpose of breeding animals of any sort, including not limited to fowl, swine, cattle, primates, rodents, reptiles, and fish.
Yeah, you have a breeding facility, and then after that, you have the kennel. So you have a lot of definitions related to animals that don't all correspond with your use table. So it's kind of like a bigger issue here. How does the town want to handle all these animal related uses in the definition section and in the use table section, which is probably a phase 2 kind of topic. But if you want to make tweaks now is the time to do it in the definition section.
Right. So it sounds like we have another action item here, right? What we
Yes.
thought was simple with some definitions is a little bit more complicated.
Well, I don't know if I would touch that commercial breeding facility, but the kennel for dogs, cats, and home pets for the purpose of sale. There may be another dash for private party, right? To allow that would define it also as a private party in case somebody did that on their home farm. And they're not a registered commercial establishment.
Hmm. Okay.
Move on. Yes, no.
Thanks.
So commercial recreation, this was one big long paragraph that was discussed in various ways, and one of the landing points was maybe it could be disaggregated so it wasn't so confusing to see all these lists in a long paragraph. And it was pickleball was recommended to be added, although so I just put in that commercial recreation uses include but are not limited to, because you're never going to list every kind of commercial recreation use. So that was my response to your recommendation. So you can give me your response to my tweak.
I didn't have any issues with it.
That looks good.
Okay. Let's see. So continuing care, let's see. Go back to continuing care. There's a question right
Oh, the
here.
only thing
So,
I had on the commercial recreation. Sorry.
oh, you did have, yeah, you did have.
That should that be capitalized there?
Commercial okay. I'll take care of that. Continuing care campus. So the number of independent living units shall not exceed 1.5 times the number of assisted living units. And Judy asked, why do you have that requirement or limitation? Does anybody know? I don't know when this was adopted, so.
I don't know either.
I don't know.
Okay.
So that's still a question.
All right. Let's see, then let's see. 6, move on to page 7 under dwelling units. So Judy's comment was this definition conflicts with the definition of multifamily for purposes of the MBTA communities law and the definition in the zoning act. So this would need to be updated. to bring it into conformance?
Bob, just so you know, I'm on now.
Oh, okay. Hello,
Sorry.
Judy.
Hi, I guess
Hi,
my
Judy.
timing was perfect. Hi, everyone. How are you?
Well, your timing is perfect. This is
Yeah.
your question.
Yeah, I mean, this definition of multifamily is fairly standard in zoning bylaws, but the fact is that the zoning act definition is a little different. And the zoning act definition is the one that controls for MBTA communities. So you may want to think about just making this definition consistent. So you don't have multifamily meaning one thing in one district and meaning something else everywhere else.
So can you make a recommendation for how we
Sure.
might?
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
it's a structure with 3 or more dwelling units or 2 or more structures on the same lot, each of which has at least 2 units. That's the only difference. Single building with 3 units or 2 or more structures on a lot, each of which has 2 or more units.
Sounds fair to me.
Okay, we'll update it then.
Yeah.
Okay, on page 8, this is all these flood boundary hazardous, and I'll question, well, we don't know if all these um, listings of code regulations and these different sections and titles are up to date or not. We would have no knowledge, and if they're not, then the town would have to provide us with what the up-to-date information would be here. So whoever, I don't know, whoever in the town handles the floodplain information, you have a town engineer that does that, or whoever handles that would probably, whoever handles that should take a look at this and see if this is still accurate or not.
Yeah, because there is new language out.
Hmm. Good point. Actually, very timely. Ben, myself, and our DPW superintendent have been working with FEMA. We have to adopt at this upcoming town meeting updated
Yep.
information. So we'll pull that together and share that with you.
Okay. Let's see, top of 9, heavy manufacturing. Well, Judy noticed the town has a definition of heavy and light manufacturing, but not manufacturing.
Just wondering, do you think you should have one? I mean, these are, some of these terms are kind of archaic. I mean, I don't know that I've seen heavy manufacturing in a zoning bylaw anywhere for several years. But it's totally up to the town.
Yeah, right now, your use table says heavy manufacturing and light manufacturing. There's no category of just manufacturing. So I'm sure that's why you have a definition of heavy manufacturing, because it reflects the use table.
Probably reflected on the areas of town that they were going to allow those types of usages, right?
Yeah, just allowed. Yeah, heavy manufacturing is just allowed in the industrial district, where light manufacturing is allowed in the industrial district and the B4 district. So
Mhm.
that's the distinction.
Yep.
So without a category saying manufacturing, you know, if you don't have a category in a use table saying manufacturing, and you put a new definition in the definition sections, as you've said before, people are going to raise a question about, what are you trying to sneak in here or something, you know? I mean, I guess that's a danger in your town meeting, but it 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 could cause confusion, and I know you're trying to avoid that, which is a good thing.
Skip down to the uses of light manufacturing and just take a look at that right now.
So the question is whether you want to add a new definition just for manufacturing or not. when you don't have you don't have a use
I would
clause.
say that they're pretty distinct, and I think that they currently they highlight which areas of town that they're going to be allowed. So I would say actually keep them the way they are right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it does make sense, right? To not have light heavy without having manufacturing. However, making a change to the definition at this point might be a bigger undertaking than what we signed on for at this point.
And both of those definitions clearly define what we currently do in town right now, right?
Right. Okay, we will move on then.
See, we always said it would be fun, Bob.
It is fun. I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
This is the easy part of doing
Mm.
zoning recodes, let me tell you. So, on page 12, mini warehouse. So this came up at the last meeting, and I was asked to do some research on this and to um, add some better language into what a mini warehouse was. And so this is the standard, the standard quote unquote definition of a mini warehouse. I looked at the definition of in the industry. I looked up the mini warehouse industry. I looked in um, zoning um, places where we have the ability to find definitions that are sort of the standard zoning definition. And this is kind of the agreed upon language that I added. It's just one sentence. That's basically what you see when you look for definitions of mini warehouses. So I just added it to your existing definition.
I don't even remember who made the request for the mini warehouse. I don't know what I would. Seems fine to me, but
Okay. Now, next page, we have a bunch of things here. So, moderate income, I had some notes from the last meeting. There was discussion about this or whether this should be expanded or not. Judy, who's the expert on these kinds of things, I asked her, and she said, it's awkward, but it does, she doesn't know, see if any
Yeah,
additional language is needed. So,
I mean, that's the state policy. Moderate income's 80%, up to 80%, and low income is 50% or below.
right. So I guess our recommendation would leave as is.
Yeah, I mean, the low income definition includes the reference to the as determined by HUD metropolitan area. I mean, I don't think this needs any more.
okay.
Now, the next one, motor vehicle and full service gas station. This prompted the conversation about the last phrase of the sentence, servicing, maintenance and servicing of vehicles shall be conducted entirely within the building. And I didn't have any, in my notes, I didn't have anything beyond that there was a discussion about that and whether that's a problem or not. Because if you still have full service gas stations or motor vehicle repair shops, they sometimes, are poking around in the engine out in the parking lot.
I think we really didn't see that much of a difference between the motor vehicle and full service gas station versus motor vehicle service station.
Yeah, I mean that was a point we raised. I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like these might have gotten adopted at two different times or something, but
Yeah.
Motor vehicle service station in the use table, and then motor vehicle repair or body shop in the use table. But the definition, motor vehicle and full service, do you have a full service gas station in the use table? I don't see it. So all I see in the use table is motor vehicle service station. Oh, you have self-service gas station, but there's nothing called full-service gas station in your use table.
Hmm, that's interesting.
So you could, I
Well,
mean,
we
you
have one,
could,
we do have one facility in town that will, they're not self-service.
Right.
They pump for you.
well, but if it's a motor vehicle, if it just said motor vehicle gas station, which reflects your use table, that could
Could
be self-service or it could be full
be full
service.
service.
Right.
Yep, I agree.
So
Yep.
I mean, I would suggest just taking out full service, those two
Yeah.
words, or and full service, and leave it motor vehicle gas station.
Yep, I agree.
That would make it
Yeah.
consistent.
We don't do anything different from a zoning perspective relative to those two, whether you're it's a self-service pump or somebody else is pumping it. It's
No,
Right.
yep. No, there's no difference.
Okay, we'll do that. So municipal use, there was some conversation about this needs to be updated without any specifics as to why or what the problem is. So without some direction, I would be kind of shooting in the dark in terms of rewriting this. I will tell you that I have I have spent an enormous amount of time, surprisingly to even to me, on this very topic with another town that has an entire section on municipal uses that was way out of date, and they wanted it updated, but they weren't sure what they wanted it updated to. And I did a whole bunch of research on all the towns, and towns are all over the place. Many of them don't even define it, and other
That's true.
towns define it very simply, like yours, and then others
Yep.
have incredible long definitions and requirements and everything else. So if this works for you, fine. If there's a problem here, then what exactly is that problem?
Yeah, I think one thing we may want to consider is that we have not several, at least three water districts, all that are established in the same form. Like I think they call it a political body or something. Tyngsborough Water's one, North Chelmsford's one, Drake Water's one. It may make more sense to just to not name them specifically, but maybe reference the legal, and I can find it. We've been dealing with them quite a bit.
Oh, so this is to also include Chelmsford and the Drake Water districts, so that it's not just Tyngsborough's water district.
Well, I guess you could just eliminate Tyngsborough Water District and just leave it as use of land, buildings, and structures by the town. The one thing I don't know, and I don't know if Bob and Judy know, or if we'd have to check with town council, is can you treat these other independently established by state law jurisdictions like the water districts differently than you can treat the town?
Yes.
So then I would recommend that we either include all of them in here or none of them, because I think you're setting Tyngsborough Water District, the only thing it has in common with us is the name. It's not governed by the town. We don't have any control over them in the same sense that we don't have control over the North Chelmsford Water District or the Drake Water District. So in my opinion, and based on the issues we've been dealing with Drake, we should probably treat them all the same.
Maybe a separate sentence to include the Chelmsford, the Drake, and also the Lowell water resources for sewer.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think one of the things I've seen in other definitions around municipal use is that it's not just land, buildings, and structures. It also includes water.
So I'm sorry, Joe, what was the one you just added on the sewer?
Yeah, it's the what's the official name? It's the Lowell Municipal Sewer System. That's where all of the sewer goes, and it gets processed in Lowell.
I don't
But
believe they
it-
own any infrastructure in Tyngsborough, though. Our sewer commission owns all of the infrastructure to the town line.
Yeah, that was exactly going to be my
That's
question.
pretty typical too.
Yeah.
100% of our waste goes there for sure, but they don't own any land or
Any
resources in
infrastructure.
Tyngsborough. Yeah.
So,
And connections. Yep.
do you want to list Tyngsborough, Chelmsford, and Drake or just say and water districts located within the towns
Or serving.
or serving the town?
That would be a good line.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay, thank you. Moving on. Retail store is the next one. So this was another conversation here again, this what's happening outside of the building where it limits outdoor display of just horticultural products to horticultural uses. And there was a comment that a lot of retail uses put some of their products out in front of the store, and this would seem to prohibit that. And you said you would talk about this at a future meeting, and here we are at a future meeting.
All agree that it may be something more than a garden center florist or a commercial greenhouse that may have some items out in front for display.
Yeah, I would assume there'd be other instances of that beyond a
The
garden
hardware
center.
store in the wintertime putting out some snow blowers, some shovels.
Right. I don't know why we had it limited that much.
It seems like it's very. Yep.
The stores want to have displays.
There are
that people-
non-automotive lots that will have a display of either SUV vehicles, sport utility, small light utility vehicle like side-by-sides, things like that, and motorcycles also that will be outside for display.
So I guess the question is, do we really need the exception?
Yeah, I mean, if you think of a lot of, I mean, I don't know all your retail stores and you don't really have a town center, but certainly the towns that have town centers, bookstores and clothing stores, they often have, a line of books or a line of clothes right up against their front windows as people are walking by and
Yep.
enticing them to spend their money. So there's a lot of opportunities that retail business people take advantage of to put something out in front of their store.
It's how they stay in business.
Mm-hmm.
I think every one of our convenience stores has ice chests outside in the summer, firewood.
So we just saying get rid of the except item. I don't. And the
And that would just limit you
within a building.
within a
to the
building.
town.
Yeah.
All right. So get rid of the except and then or merchandise. Is it within a building? Is it or from a building? Isn't it from the building? Because that's your storefront. And even then, I may order it. Oh my, I just disappeared. I may order it from the retail store to be shipped to my house. You're just conducting business from the store. Being in the building doesn't I'm not sure I understand why that would be a requirement.
That was probably a very old written
Yeah,
bylaw
yeah.
definition.
Yeah, from a building would, I think,
Mhm.
would just changing that word would solve this problem.
Yeah, just change it to from, and then get rid of the exception.
Right.
Yep,
Okay.
agree.
I doubt we get a lot of challenges on that particular one.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, there's various minor grammatical and punctuation and spacing corrections through here, but let's see. Page 16, slaughterhouse and similar. Judy? Is Judy gone?
No, she's just on mute.
I'm here. What's the matter?
What's the matter?
Yeah.
This is what's the matter.
You're gonna bring it up again? I just,
Slaughterhouse and similar. Judy's comment. Confusing. Are these words really necessary?
oh, yeah, slaughterhouse and similar, what? What does that mean? How can something be similar to a slaughterhouse? It's either a slaughterhouse or it's not. I mean, I'm just trying to understand what the intent was of this term. Don't everybody laugh at me. I'm serious. I'm trying
No,
to
I
understand this.
understand where you're coming from. I agree, and especially because it it clearly defines the activities because it's got slaughter, butchering, cleaning. It gets very specific. So the
Right.
similar is just like it doesn't seem like it's necessary.
It sounds like somebody was afraid that something might slip in that wasn't exactly a slaughterhouse, but had the same characteristics. And so we just say and similar and leave it up to the building inspector or the ZBA to interpret. But I mean, I would just clean it up as slaughterhouse. That's what it is.
And since we are a farming community, we do have the last sentence, which is associated with the normal conduct of farming operations should not be considered inclusive to that definition. So that's good.
Right. Yep.
Right.
Okay. And then we're going on to page 18. So in the discussion last week about mini warehouses and self-storage, self-service storage facilities, I was asked to put in a definition of self-storage facility, but what I found was the term is going to mostly mini warehouse now. But because people were asking for this, I thought, well, maybe I'll just put this in because some people still call them self-service storage facilities and
Right.
just see the definition for mini warehouse. Just so if anybody's wandering around under the S's looking for self-storage, they'll know they'll find the definition under the M's.
Right.
So just being helpful, that's all. And then structure, this is a Judy comment.
Well,
Oh,
It's-
right, yeah, good comment.
its structure in this definition is related to the floodplain district. So if you're going to limit the definition of structure in your bylaw this way, I would make it a subordinate entry under floodplain. Because structure has other meanings outside of the floodplain district. So I think just a placement issue here would be good to clean that up.
And we've got to do that anyway. The whole floodplain
Right.
sections need to be redone anyway. So
Exactly.
Colin, add this into your list, and Ben, add that into your list because that structure doesn't fit there. That is not
it.
Right.
Okay, page 19. Temporary independent living quarters. Okay, well, now that we have a proposed ADU definition, the question is, what do you want to do with this?
Right.
Yeah, and we said we got to merge this together. So as we're working with NEMCOG, we need to factor that into these definitions. Because we're not sure whether we're going to keep temporary independent living quarters and just address ADUs completely separately, or whether we're going to merge them together.
Well, I think, I mean, at some point you got to make that decision because
Mhm.
this is very broad. I mean, this could easily fall under the definition of ADU.
Yep.
And I don't know what distinguishes it.
This is a little more restrictive in the fact that it has to be a temporary occupancy of another individual related to the owner and resident of the primary
Oh, that's
structure.
right, the relative
Right,
thing is in.
Yeah,
right,
well, the other
right.
one was, could be a rental. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right.
Which is the caution about merging these two, because that's a big distinction
That
and
is,
an important distinction. It's one of the reasons why the state legislature got passed so that, towns couldn't do this, keep doing this. Now that you got the ADUs, you could still have this as a separate kind of use. But
But who's gonna do this? I mean, why would someone spend the money to create an ADU and have it subject to this kind of restriction?
Was this bigger? Correct
this,
me if I'm wrong. This goes to 1,200, right? 1,200 square feet.
it
Yeah,
doesn't say.
it doesn't say, yeah.
it goes to 1,200 square feet with a special permit. And that's kind of where
Yeah.
I was bringing up earlier the definition for the ADU, because it might be confusing for people if we have the 900 square feet in the definition for the ADU, but we allow 1,200 of the square feet with a special permit like that. It might be confusing to have the definition the way it is. So that's what I meant by like looking at the definition with NIMCOG.
This goes bigger. That's the right now. That's the only thing, and we need to determine whether there's going to be enough people that are willing to do they want to do the extra 300 feet. This is also supposed to be temporary. I know that we don't necessarily look at it that way,
It's a little
but
bit of a sliding scale too. It's half
But-
of the original property up to 1,200 and then, or 900, whichever is minimum, which is a small, well, not 1,200, whichever is the minimum. So max 900, I guess. And this one was 1,200, like you said. So
But if
that, and it's family only.
if there's a special permit involved, I mean, you could just have a special permit provision under your ADU bylaw for a dwelling or an ADU that exceeds 900 square feet.
I think it may be, ADU might be is that, correct me if I'm wrong, is that going to
By
be
right.
permittable by right?
By
And
right.
this
Well,
has to
yes,
be
but you
special
can
permit.
have,
Yeah.
you can
So it's
have a
different.
special permit to vary from that standard. So if you want to have an ADU that's larger than 900 square feet, you can do a special permit for that. You just have to allow the as of right as it's written in the legislation.
I think that's why we're reviewing how
Yeah.
how these are gonna work together, if they will,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
we didn't have as much of the restrictions as other towns did because we did allow this.
Yeah.
So, but it's not as lenient as the ADU. So
Right.
we have to determine whether there's anything that we want to maintain, and I think that's what NIMCOG's helping
Sure.
us with.
Yeah. So we don't have to go there on this?
But we know we have to clean it up before
You
we
do, but we're not, so are we not doing that? You guys are with,
with NIMCOG.
I see, okay.
Okay. Page 20, tree clearing plan. So the definition as it currently exists doesn't make any sense in terms of it being a tree clearing plan, which was pointed out by the committee at the last meeting. I went and looked at the tree section of the bylaw, and just from language that's in there, the only place a tree clearing plan is mentioned is where it has a subtitle of tree clearing permit, and there it says a tree clearing plan has to be submitted with a tree clearing permit. And then it doesn't say what the tree clearing plan should be. So just from those three words, I surmise that it would have to show tree clearing activities on the subject site and any proposed replacement trees, information including location, type, caliber of replacement trees. So that's what I'm suggesting, to have a clear definition as opposed to what's there now.
Okay.
And with that, we have gone through the definition section.
Very efficient.
So we have more work to do. but less work than we did for this draft. So the next draft will have. So, again, if someone could remind us the time, the schedule here for
Yes.
getting a draft, this next draft to all of you, and
You got it. So in order for it to be on the warrant when the board posted on April 7th, Ben and I have identified with the planning board
okay.
schedule that we would do a public hearing on March 20th. So we would advertise that hearing beginning on March 6th. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have to have the draft filed with the town clerk when we advertise the hearing. So
That is correct.
That is correct. Yeah.
So March 6th would be when we need the final one. So with that in mind, I can quickly propose a date for the next meeting to review, if that works for everybody.
Sure.
I assume you'll want a couple weeks to make those tweaks.
I don't know. It'll take a couple of weeks. It doesn't
Yeah,
seem
so-
like it's
okay.
big tweaks left.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Then, so do you want me to look at a week from tonight? Tuesday the 25th won't work. Tuesday the 18th from a public meetings perspective is open.
School vacation, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's
how many
right. School
folks are dealing with that.
vacation. And holiday, well, of course it's a holiday. The 17th is a
The
holiday.
17th
Okay.
is a holiday. Yeah.
I'm in Amherst next Tuesday night.
Okay, let's look at the fall. The rest of that week is other public meetings.
Mm-hmm.
The Thursday, the 27th, there's no conflicting public meeting, at least on Tyngsborough side.
I'm available.
At 5, is that when we be meeting? Is it
Or
5?
4, would it be 4? We meet,
Uh.
4:05.
Yeah, either way. I have a night meeting, but I could do a 4 or 5 o'clock meeting in the afternoon easily.
I would defer to the members. I get paid to be here whenever you tell me to, so if the members are available.
The 27th at 5 is fine with me.
Yeah, let's shoot for 5, just because I know some folks. I know I'm working, but let's shoot for the 27th at 5
Okay.
p.m.
I will,
Thank
just because we don't have a quorum here right now, I'll send an email to the entire group tonight to make sure there will be a quorum at that meeting, because I assume we'll have to at that meeting vote to
Yes.
approve the final one. So I will send that out. It'll be a Zoom meeting again, and I'll confirm everybody probably tomorrow or the next day.
Yep.
Excellent.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right. I guess we can't vote to adjourn, can we?
You cannot, so we will just
You
end the
have to
meeting.
Just say
stay
goodbye.
on the Zoom meeting.
Forever.
I was
Thanks,
sitting there going,
everybody.
we can't even vote to adjourn. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.